Hello, welcome and welcome back. This is Jacob and today we are gonna be finishing off the narration and character voicing for An Obscure Wanderer side story in Arknights. Once again, no timestamp in the comment section. I'm gonna be brief with the recap of the previous part, considering this video alone is already gonna be shorter than the usual narrations on the channel. But outside of that, once again, thank you for the nice comments and likes on the previous episode, and let's get going, shall we? So first off, in the previous part we started on the No Peace side story, in which we saw our dear Plastic Knight Shevchik, after the events of the Nearl Light story, now living in Dzwonek, where all of this kerfuffle is happening together with his wife and son. And on one of the just normal days, as he's watching the news about a terrorist leader in town, which we've seen is not really a terrorist leader, but it's just a very big fanboy of a certain Ashlock. But he heads out to pick his son from school. Immediately, some explosions start happening in the downtown, in the more derelict piece of the city, where infected and homeless people are usually calling their home. He rushes in to find his son, immediately starts hiring people to find as many kids as possible in the district and get them out of there. Inevitably saving about 22 children, I think was the number at the end, through his actions. But as he is in the district, he hears some fighting going on, rushes in, only to find Mlynar and the delegate from Lithuanian duking it out together with their the delegate together with his bodyguard. But unbeknownst to him, prior, the delegate ran into Mlynar. Stuff was peaceful, but then he overheard on a radio next to a recently passed away person that some kerfuffle is happening, and because of the very delicate information that he heard over the radio, he immediately crushed it and just pleaded and kept on calling that he did not hear anything, just to let him go, that he's gonna go back to Lithuanian. But unbeknownst to him, because he wasn't aware what Mlynar would be doing at that point, his bodyguard came around and they both attacked Mlynar. Plastic overheard the fight, came in Russian, started unloading his crossbow onto both of them. Mlynar just parrying the shit out of the bolts, and or rather dodging the bolts and saving Zeno alongside. The delegate uses this chance to get away with his bodyguard, and while Plastic is engaged with Mlynar gets privy to the information that Plastic is just looking for his son. Says that he saw a boy with the same hair color earlier helping his injured friend out of the district, and that he will probably find him in the nearest hospital, which Shevchik believes Mlynar, and he goes away. He later gets surrounded by a lot of reporters and asked about why he decided to help so many children, and that, funnily enough, no one apparently is recognizing him as the Plastic Knight anymore, even though it's only been a very, very short while. It's literally been like maybe, what, 3 or 4 months at this point, and no one is actually recognizing him anymore as the actual Plastic Knight, only calling him to maybe be a fan of Plastic because of the armor he's wearing. But he reunites with his son, as we see at the end of that part, and his son wants to be a knight like his dad now. In our second story, or rather in the continuation in Sunken Sun, we saw pretty much a conversation happening between Toland and Mlynar, and another conversation between Chitsibor and one of the knights that serves under him. Toland and Mlynar pretty much get privy to information that has been given to them by, or rather given to Toland, by Desh earlier in the story, and he learns from pretty much the information he got from the files she handed out, that Chitsibor is definitely planning something, and that something being the assassination of the delegate to spark at least a conflict. Not potentially a war could break out from this, but definitely Lots of skirmishes, lots of conflict, and lots of tension, leading to potentially a lot of dead people along the way. All in the hopes just to bring back to the minds of people how important the campaign knights are to the overall safety of them. But in the other conversation between Chizibor and the knight under him, we see a bit more about his aspirations and the plan that they've been concocting for a while now. And yeah, and at the final moment we get a message, or rather they get a message from the Grand Knight territory, from the great Chungavanga of all the knights, telling them to pull out and return to the Grand Knight territory. They are being recalled. So, what is gonna happen now? Well, let's see. We are gonna begin today's part with the second to last story, titled Empty Armor. Let's begin. Oh, and just a quick one, this black screen right now that you're looking at with text is gonna be a conversation between 3 people. I am fairly sure that I'm guessing who all 3 are. One, or rather 2 are very obvious. Well, one is very, very obvious, the other 2 are a bit vaguer, but I think I can guess who all 3 of these are. So, allow me. I don't believe they would just go off the grid like this. House Nearl would not simply sit around. I think so too, and their disappearance is quite curious. You know as well as I do that the trail the hunter followed to the Grand Prairie went cold 3 years ago. No one's seen them since. But even if we're all thinking this, you still have to take care of old Kirill, right? I've been thinking these past few years. A lot of people have their eyes on House Nearl. They envy my brother's honors and despise a vagabond like me. But your older brother Schnitz is the greatest general in his generation. Why, with our own eyes, we saw him. Who could deny his ability, even out of envy? Would they rather lose wars? These people feel that wars are no longer necessary, or rather they don't want to face war anymore. That's why they're sheathing their sharpest sword and forcing me to return to the Grand Knight territory. But you can't go back. As I said, House Nearl can't simply sit around. Why so excited, Chizibor? And why the frown? Not sleeping well, worried that the people we saved could be recaptured? No, I'm just thinking too much about this assassination. Assassination? Oh, I'm dreaming. Do it. December 1st, 12:15 a.m. Outside Zwonek. But send word to the sentries inside. Do it. Everyone, get ready to move. But our orders are to stay where we are. Cavalierki has everything under control. And are those words enough to break a knight's spear? Have the bolts in your crossbows turned to dust? The campaign knights are the only protectors that the panicking people will see. Can this fact be changed, or does the Adeptus Praviltivli Casimirs lack the courage to muster even when Lithanian bears its fangs? Our duty cannot be changed by a single word from the Adeptus Praviltivli. Move. This is an order. I'm sorry, sir, but you're no longer in position to give orders. The Adeptus Praviltivli has revoked your command. The captains and the Craftsmen's Guild have already been notified. We fight for the glory of our nightclub, for the proper recognition of us campaign knights. But the Grand Knight territory has the authority to veto all of it. So, you won't obey? Then I'll personally pass on my orders. You... The orders for Dzwonek has been issued. Everything shall proceed according to plan. All who assent with me. The captain sheathes his dark red sword and marches past the camp tents. Dozens of highly ranked campaign knights are on duty, but they simply stand by the wayside. No one joins him or attempts to obstruct him. No one salutes. I apologize, but due to a number of recent incidents, we are now required to inspect all vehicles that leave the city via the lift platform between midnight and 6 AM. May I have your ID and documentation, please? Here. Thank you. A moment, please. May I interest you in Dzwonek's specialty herb-flavored stock beef jerky? It's quite a popular souvenir. No, thank you. He waits impatiently, but the inspector's examination drags on. You see Lithanian's emblem, don't you? Is this really necessary? Huh? No need to worry about witnesses or public opinion at this hour. If the Spire caster nullifies the bolts, you have permission to use javelins. No need to worry about the consequences either. None of the cities still remember how the campaign knights strike. Hey, old friend. You stand in my way once again. Should I feel relieved that you're still willing to act after all these years? If you're here, then I suppose there will soon be an unexplained violent incident near Dzwonek, involving unknown parties. Bounty hunters and campaign knights neither should ever come anywhere near a city that marches relentlessly forward. I only came to pick up my sword, as promised. You didn't come empty-handed, though. What about you? Your followers? You know the answer to that. The Grand Knight territory has intervened as you hoped. The loyal knights acknowledge their new orders. For honor, for chivalrous order, for their long-term interests, for the vainglory of their campaigns. The Grand Knight territory has... it seems you didn't know. The Adeptus Praviltivli Casimirs cast its eyes along bloodlines. They know all that goes on in every corner of Casimirs. This has nothing to do with me. My apologies. It couldn't have been you. You would not have begged for help from the Adeptus Praviltivli and the Grand Knight. You came to convince me to turn back. But there is no way back, now that they've learned of the plan, and the Grand Knight has issued her orders. Besides, I've raised my sword against my own men, to give the order to begin the operation. Now that I know how hard it is to see a deed through to the end, it makes me admire what you did even more. Who do you think you are, to compare what you're doing to what I did? I suppose I didn't provoke as many people as you. You're not provoking anyone. You're just contemptible. If you're not ashamed of your own actions, then why did you go to the convoluted lengths of leaking intelligence to pit me against the delegation from Lithanian? No need to criticize my means. I'm simply as disappointed with you as I am with Casimirs. Oh, right. The Adeptus Pravildivli does not permit negative news about campaign knights to exist in writing. If I really did follow the orders to stand down, what do you think would happen to me? Would I die of a mysterious illness on my way back to the Grand Knight territory, or be forever imprisoned beneath the tower just like you? You're in no position to talk about my life, Chitsibor. If you insist on trying to decide for millions of people where the battlefield should lie, then you deserve your punishment. It is a campaign knight's duty to fight for the common folk. The unarmed are the first to be abandoned in war. You should have made a smarter choice. Even if it didn't involve returning to the campaign knights. I should have ran from Casimir's. Then why have you stayed, if you truly believe that leaving was the only correct choice? Or should I have abandoned the plan in its entirety, even if this is my last chance? You know better than I do that Casimir's needs true violence. It needs a war that will turn it on its head. No. I've never once thought that way. Is that so? All these years we thought we knew each other so well. Well enough to leave certain things unsaid. Now I'm beginning to wonder just how much of that was all a misunderstanding. We should have sat down to talk like the old days, before a campfire in a forest clearing. If you weren't set on standing in my way right now, I'd have picked a branch and made a spear out of it, just like back then. You need to wake up. Stand down, sir. There are archers nearby. Who are they? First last night and now this. Who could be after me? This is no checkpoint, Aloysia. We must go. Inspector, I suggest you go out of the way if you don't want to be over... Now, don't be hasty. Our guys have taken out the ones in your way. I suggest you relax and refrain from using Originium arts. There are some traps here that are triggered by energy, and I doubt you'd enjoy the trip back to Lethanin if anything happened to your car. When did you... Sir! Oh, sorry. To put it simply, we would like this gentleman to come with us. May we have your cooperation? Serious advice. We're all screwed if the trap blows up. You're good, but not good enough to deal with everyone here. Can't hurt to hear me out, can it? There's nothing for us to discuss, mercenary. Oh, are you really thinking about setting it off just to give your master a chance to escape? That's why I never liked you Spirecasters. Nut jobs. Chill out. This isn't worth any of our lives. The inspector isn't one of ours. Neither are the ambushing archers. Go on. In the mood to listen now. Multiple groups fighting over the same objective is a fact of life in this line of work. Some people want to keep the things safe, others want to watch it all burn. Think about it carefully. There's a little village by the road to the southeast, about 30 minutes from here. On the highest building in the village is a shield emblem that looks like it could fall off at any moment. It'd make our job much easier if you waited there. Chitsibor down his helmet. Such a familiar light. The real Nearl. I've read the legend of Kirill, seen the Radiant Knight's name on banners in the streets, heard of your brother's blinding light from your own mouth. But this is the only Nearl I know. It's just like in that banquet of betrayal. I thought I'd open the door to see the ground covered in blood, only to find myself bathing in a rain of light. That was many years ago. Indeed, being praised for all deeds is in itself a tragedy. What have you been doing all these years? Your sword is still sharp, your light even more disciplined. But there is enough power in your blade to parry even the weight of a heavy lance. Why do you ask when you already know the answer? Because I don't believe you're powerless. I don't believe you couldn't have testified to Selina's innocence when she was being tried before the National Council. It would have taken a mere word. I don't believe that she could have simply vanished without a trace without you so much as casting a glance at her. There are many things that I feel powerless about. I didn't think they could trap you. There was no point in testifying to her innocence. None of us could have saved her. The old you would never have said that. You would have pushed to have the justice you saw missing from the National Council codified into law. There were too many forces involved. 13 people were convicted. One law would not have brought them to justice. So you measured their injustice against your life and decided it was not worth the risk. Have you become afraid of death? Or have you simply decided that nothing is worth risking your life for anymore? The campaign knight's blows fall hard. His lance was intended to pierce armor and shields, creations of stone and steel. But now he aims his pent-up fury at an unseen foe. You're losing your balance, Cheatsybor. Don't make elementary mistakes. One more and it'll be more than your armor that cracks. Huh. We haven't sparred in ages, have we? Maybe I'm fiercer than you remember. And what about you? You never considered sheathing your sword when we tried to persuade you. Another charge. The lance smashes against the ground, sending gravel flying with Originiumart sparks. Nice dodge. You didn't care what the disgraced nobles and blackmail mercenaries thought. You didn't care about warnings from on high, or whether it was all for naught. You would have exiled yourself from the Grand Knight territory forever, gone out in a blaze of glory for justice. What about now? If you can't do it, then stand aside and watch. I'll do what you should have. Who are you to judge what I should do? Nearl's sword looks like it is simply shaking off the rain. Scorching golden light falls upon the campaign knight's armor, leaving behind burn marks. You who throws his life away callously and refuses to turn back despite knowing that there is no hope. I don't want you to die here. Your plan should not and will not succeed. What are you so obsessed with? Hey, you're awake. Sorry, I was hired to cause you a bit of trouble. By the way, we're on a pharmaceutical delivery truck and the windshield was broken by a stray bolt. It took quite a bit of effort to get you here. Fortunately, we can take a breather now that we're in the underground transport tunnels. This place is most chaotic in the early hours of morning, outsourcing, irregular transactions, vehicles turned over accidentally. Ooh, what do you want? Where's Aloysia? Your bodyguard? She should be waiting outside the city if she cooperates. I needed her to create a distraction. Don't worry, no archer is going to be a problem for a caster of her skills. As for us, we're here to help. I guess, but we're not exactly doing this pro bono. And the client is a bit of a penny pincher if you catch my drift. So, we've got a few wounded, and I think we ought to discuss your ransom. To cover the medical expenses, so to speak. Now, will you be so kind as to put away your wand? I've always found casters from Lithanian to be a headache. Very well. I will pay a reasonable ransom. I will ask no questions. I won't attempt to track you down afterwards. We shall negotiate like civilized people. Excellent. I'm just doing my job. Once this truck gets the goods to the destination, it'll be only a short wait before we get out. I hear empty crates. Oh, I'm not suggesting that you're the goods. The truck was rented and the permit borrowed. Gotta put up appearances after all. Plus, in the event that something happens to your bodyguard, this cross-border business permit will give us a reason to drop you off outside Casimir's. Who do you... Never mind, I don't want to know. Good. Now how about we talk money to pass the time? You ask what I'm obsessed with? This society has clear-cut rules. When the price of everything in life is clearly marked and labeled, it doesn't take a calculator to make the optimum decision. But why are we not allowed to choose less wisely? I know the Adeptus Pravilivli Casimirs invited you, as they invited every Nearl. Not to mention the businessman who would have every last night humiliated in the arena. You could have had great power, great prestige, great wealth. You could have saved so many people. But you didn't. You're a stubborn one too. Why are you trying to persuade me? I returned to the ranks of the campaign knights, to the path of vassalage, in order to seek those who walk the same path. Do not misunderstand, Mlynar. It's not war that I seek. War is inevitable, and the knights must carry that burden. Many have never seen the shadow beneath Lithanian's spire, never heard the wailing in the northern wind, which is why they can cheer for the blood spilled in the arena. But I bear no grudge against them. Chivalry may shine among the campaign knights, but it does not come from the glint of a sword. It is not authority through violence that I want to show people, nor the bones and smoldering ruins spread across the barren lands. What I want to show them is that one does not have to trample upon other lives, that one can also choose to sacrifice oneself for others. That's what a knight sheds their blood for. The honor of a knight needs no testimony. How can you claim to uphold chivalry when you have given up the ground on which you stand and left your fate to a war you have no control over? Can you continue to shed tears and feel sorrow for the dead who lie in your path? A drop of rain falls upon the tip of the spear. The forest's night fog glows as though the dawn has come early in the drizzle. Finally, you're not holding back your Reginium arts. I'm in full gear, while you're not even wearing basic armor. Is this really a fair duel? What armor can bear the full brunt of a campaign knight's blow? Especially one from you. Yes, it's perfect. Wait, you're... Hey, good eyes. Some nobles didn't even realize until 2 months into our partnership. Others realized it immediately, but kept their mouths shut, as though they didn't know anything. Sarka's mercenaries. Has the business machine of Casimir's taken in your ilk too? You flatter us. It's no skin off my nose, whatever you think we are, but there are more than just Sarkas hiding here. Casimir treats us all equally when it's deciding who to throw away. Spooked? The only thing unusual about the Sarkas is that we live a bit longer than the average Casimirsian, and I'm still pretty young. Although, it's true that I have fewer and fewer old friends by the year. Silver shards litter the ground in the falling rain. The broken armor cannot keep the blood inside. It's over. No. Who do you want me to admit defeat to? The campaign knight grabs his lance again and lunges forward, but his legs do not move. Who do you want me to admit defeat to? The knight stumbles and falls to his knees as the golden light rains down on his cheeks. He raises his head and gazes at Nearl, his eyes wide open in the rain. To the nobles in the higher tower of the Adeptus Pravildivi Casimirs, who spent their days in intrigue and vainglory. To the merchants who cover up their dark deeds with false mirth, and disguise their twisted greed with contrived jest. Do you want me to admit that I can never win against the tyranny of bloodlines? Or do you want me to flee Casimirs, abandon the struggle and bow down to all that we despised? I never saw another path worth taking. You still won't admit the only possibility, will you? Then prove it with your sword. If it's you who thinks I'm wrong, then I'll accept it. I didn't lose to power, to money, to the will to survive, or to the inexorable time. No. Mlynar sheathes his sword. The rain of light continues to fall from the cold night sky before the dawn. Like I said, you don't need to die here. If he turned back, it would stop, he thought. How do you live with it, Mlynar? Even though your fury burns so much fiercer than mine, even though you've seen the same things I have. Don't tell me you don't see it. The GCC meddles with the campaign knights at will. More and more knights sell their honor and their swords to those merchants, fueling their increasing ambition. As for Lithanian, much time has passed since the fall of the Witch King's spire. I have seen with my own eyes their war preparations. This is no romanticism in it. There is no romanticism in it. Only terror. And there will always be those who roam the barren lands, made pariah by catastrophe, war, and the evolution of the cities. You know all this, so why do you not draw your sword? His vision blurs, and he cannot see Mlynar's expression, only that he is still gazing down on him. Why do you hesitate? What are you thinking? He finds no answer in the rain, only golden starlight melting in his field of vision. Every breath he takes is a struggle, as his life flows out along his cold armor. And that scornful sneer from up high, which awaits all who passionately pursue their ideals. Not the numb spectators who snigger as I weep for the victims. I feel equal sorrow from them as I do for the dead. It's the ones who are even now sneering at my futile efforts against them. Even if I banged my head so hard against this wall that my bones shattered into dust, there will be no echo. The rain does not stop. His eyes remain wide. He recalls the summer downpour, the muddy forest ground, the ring of wild flowers flowing on the stream. He remembers the last good dream he had in those times. You should not be so silent, Nearl, he thought. Just like then, you must return to the Grand Knight territory after our long and futile journey. don't believe you can let it go, Mlynar. Their two names were erased just as they shined the brightest, like a fire thrown into a deep pool, going out without a trace. For 15 years, the Adeptus Provilively has remained silent. Your questions have gone unanswered. House Nearl, bright as they are, was rejected by Casimirs, and the nation has sunken into darkness and will not abide even a single ray of light. That's why you became disillusioned. You don't know how many years they've waited in foreign lands. What did you say? I encountered them a few years ago when infiltrating Lithanian. Drip. A single drop of ink stained the last letter from home. He never had the chance to send a letter asking the question that he harbored for 20 years. After 20 years of silence, he knows this is the only thing he can ask the campaign knight. Did you tell anyone else about this? Chitsibor shakes his head. Mlynar waits in long silence for the next rebuke, and even longer for a word of repentance. But the only response is a long exhalation, like a sigh, followed by the soft sound of clanking metal. The campaign knight's body leans towards his lance that pierce the earth. It is like one of the countless suits of empty armor they have seen on the barren lands. After a moment, Mlynar kneels in the rain, making a gesture of mourning for his former comrade. I will talk about this at the end of this video, but for now we are gonna continue with our final portion of the story, Words of Farewell. Back in a familiar bar. Barson, how come this place feels so darn quiet lately? You think? Maybe it only feels that way because you have one less person to talk to now that Maria is no longer around. Now that you mention it, I guess that might be it. I mean, at her age, she should really go out and see the world. It's just, who knows when she'll remember to come home for a visit. You'd better get everything in your workshop in order, then, old bones. When she finally gets back, you should hand her the keys. Ah, it's been a while, my favorite customer. Good afternoon, everybody. Looks like the Radiant Knight can finally catch a breather. Everything is starting to move in the right direction, and I'm getting used to handling the desk work. I've been saying this for some time now, but don't try to take on everything. Now that Zofia and Maria aren't around, how are you supposed to deal with all this? Yeah, thanks for worrying about me. It's true that there is much I can't handle. All I can do is deal with what I can. Perhaps it's because I've been away from Casimirs for too long, or perhaps I just never knew much about the city's rules in the first place. And now that I must live with these rules for the foreseeable future, I finally realize how little I understood. Sometimes I even think that, from what I remember of my time in Casimirs before my exile, all I ever did was take grandfather's hand, follow him, and watch the scenery from that safe road. If I may ask once again, what happened during the years I was away? Back in the village. Ah, what a coincidence. Fancy running into you again, Sir Mlynar. You commissioned the bounty hunters and disappeared just as quickly. That kind of behavior gets you blacklisted, you know. Do you need something? Me? I'm just here to take a look at the village. After all, the villagers did send us a message asking for help. The construction team was supposed to start work today, but now that Gale Industries is under investigation, the land sale has been called off. Or so I hear. I do read the papers. Oh, then I'm sure you've also read that the investigation dragged in quite a number of other companies and old noble families. The National Council even dug up a certain old case from a few years ago, all thanks to this. The ones who took the blame back then are long gone, and not a lot of people still remember how it all went down. But I'm sure you do. If they're no longer around, is there really a point in celebrating this? I suppose you're right. I'm sure our good noble knight wouldn't consider those men even worth taking revenge on. As for us lowly bounty hunters, all we did is help pass the evidence from one pair of hands to another. Nothing worth paying any mind to. But now that everything's been taken care of and the dust has settled, we go pretty far back, right? I think I've earned the right to ask a few questions. If it's about Chitsibor, I have nothing to say. Right, I think we both need some time to ourselves. If you still need to mull this over, I shan't bother you. But I'm sure you know how I managed to find you. All I'm saying is, I have nothing to say. If you're really that curious, he was an unwavering man who rambled on about his impossible ideals for the knighthood, right to the very end. And if you think this deserves mourning, suit yourself. From the sounds of it, that was quite the cruel final conversation. But since you brought it up, I suppose it's not so bad to talk about it a little. I remember there was this one time I ran into that self-taught medic of ours. He was with a heavy injured comrade of his, lying on the ground, so he picked up a weapon and sent his friend on his way. I have no idea what they talked about. All I could see was that he was covered in blood and looked pretty uncomfortable. He must have been depressed, or so I thought. Do you know what he said after that? He told me the blood was too hot. It might actually be a pretty nice way to go, thinking everything is looking hopeful and that your ideals are about to come true. Alas, if at the very end you're still only talking ideals, you probably aren't dying with your mind at ease. You could still probably make everything else feel burnt, though. Burnt? Given the biased ideas he chose in his depression and anger, I have no sympathy for a tragic end. His doubts don't even compare to everything I've pondered over the years. If you wanted to find out what drove him to such extremes, be it pain or ambition, then I'm afraid you'll be disappointed. Really? What a shame. Surely you've seen enough men stray onto the wrong path. A few years back, we had a small skirmish with another band of hunters in this area. He lent us a helping hand, or rather, he chased away both sides. A campaign knight who'd choose to go on patrol all over the place on his own. Quite interesting, wouldn't you agree? At the very least, I'd say he was a stronger man than a certain noble scion who was working an office job in the Grand Knight territory. This isn't the time for jokes, Toland. Huh, don't be so serious. I even heard that after this whole conspiracy was exposed, some of the infected workmen were given protection in secret, sparing them from becoming needless sacrifices in the political struggle's aftermath. And well, I found you through them. What do you think now, Mlynar? It's been years. A knight should not remain forever in doubt. He should have an answer that he firmly believes in. I've never had an answer. Casimir does not need an answer from me either. I'm an ordinary man, nothing more. Why ask me? Then perhaps you should think about doing something other than holding yourself up in the Grand Knight territory again. You can't keep blaming yourself for his death, much less go this far to atone for it. An eager bartender. Excuse me, are you two tourists? Our beer is known far and wide, so would each of you like to try a pint? You may, of course, drink outside if you'd like. No, thanks. Weather's getting cold. Too bad. I only turned her down because of how dreary drinking by myself would be. Otherwise, I could really use some booze to lighten things up. If only Chitsibor had behaved himself for just a couple more days, we could have had a blast at our reunion party. That way, you could have kept a clear head and stayed out of it. No one would have blamed you for it. I never said I'd stand aside and do nothing. However, I was the one who refuted his ideals. I listened to him until the very end. And I killed him. But I respected his life nonetheless. If only for his final question and nothing more, I must find an answer. Back at the bar. I visited grandfather's grave this morning. I thought about a lot of things as I stood there, my regrets about the past, and for certain things in the present. I really wish I could still talk to him, tell him about all this, seek his advice, but all I could do was say my farewells after such a long absence. It hadn't sunk in until after I'd finished all my work last night and set down my pen. He truly isn't with us anymore. I didn't have to keep my voice down so as to not disturb him. Don't blame yourself, Margaret. We all know you couldn't have made it back, nor should you have. Nonetheless, I still feel terrible for not being able to stay by my grandfather's side or to hear his final wishes. Maria told me that he sent a messenger for me from his deathbed. Huh, now that you mention it, yeah. But Kirill seemed even happier when the messenger told him she couldn't reach you. After all, if a messenger can't find you, then an assassin sure as hell can't. He told us himself that he'd rather the children of the Nearl family grow up elsewhere instead of Casimir's, as it is now. At the very least, I'm sure he'd be more than satisfied if he could see you now. Thanks. So, how was the family after her grandfather passed away? Not gonna lie, some folks still have it in for the Nearls. Even the messenger he sent after you got shot by an arrow, not long after she got back. She had to hide out here for a while. Just a bunch of cowards who've only got the balls to ambush a messenger. If someone really dared to pick a fight with the Nearls, we wouldn't just sit on the sidelines and watch. I see. I should have realized sooner that this sort of thing could happen. Only grandfather's reputation was shielding us from these attacks, covert and otherwise. Actually, I was threatened too, not too long ago. Who's got the balls to pick a fight with you? Oh, no, not me directly. A friend that I had recently met at a welfare event was injured. I only found out afterward. Apparently my speech offended some members of the GCC. They sent an anonymous letter warning me to be more careful about what I say. But I understand that this didn't happen because of a single speech or turn of phrase. It's more likely that they simply used that as an excuse. Perhaps such attacks will happen again and again, until I'm made to cover and stop being a thorn in their side. Of course, I don't plan to let that happen. I will keep fighting, and do everything in my power to protect others. I just thought you should know. It's just like the Major. It's only thanks to the support of my friends that I could finish the competition.
Why even mention it? Can't we at least help the Nearls out in their time of need? Besides, not a single one of the folks that came looking for trouble knew how to fight if their lives depended on it.
Don't forget to come to us for help just because you're too busy with work. Thanks for always being there for us, everyone.
Aw, our little Margaret is starting to act more and more like a real knight primus.
No, I've only just gotten back to Casimir's. There are still so many responsibilities I must shoulder, but don't fully understand.
Right, Margaret, you're Rhode Island's liaison with Casimir's. They take care of quite a few infected, don't they? Are the infected and medical personnel there part of these responsibilities too?
Oh, there is nothing to worry about on that end. Rhode Island has attempted aid in places where their status is even more complicated than it is here. They know how to navigate these societal pitfalls much better than me. That said, there are quite a lot of infected who don't want to go through with the treatment, and that's actually our biggest problem.
Because of money?
Right, the emergency treatment that they provide is only temporary. To continue to suppress the neuropathy growth, you only have to keep buying medicine. You have to keep buying medicine in the long term. The way Casimir's is now, there is no path for the infected other than becoming a knight. Some will never be able to afford the cost of ongoing treatment. There are also many who think Rhode Island is just trying to squeeze money out of them. After all, it is an incurable disease. Sorry for rambling. I always get carried away whenever I talk about the infected.
Well, you've got no one to vent to at home. If you need someone to talk to, you could do worse than us. Besides, hearing you worry about all that stuff really brings it home that you're an adult now.
Master Cowell, do you remember my parents' portrait we have in the hall at home? The one from their younger years? I only noticed this just yesterday, but I look almost the same age now as they do in that painting.
Huh. Well, when you put it that way, time sure has flown by.
Right, I feel the same way, and that's one of the reasons why I wanted to stop by today. I remember back when my parents had just left. I had just learned to read well enough to take in the whole novel. Back then, looking at the illustrations in those knightly legends, I always thought the female leads were drawn based on mother. But what kind of knights were they anyway? When they left, I wasn't even old enough to seriously spar with father in the training grounds. And once during a duel, Uncle Liam told me I resembled my father.
That punk schnitz, huh? Back when I was still a campaign knight, I'd never seen a young man better suited for the world talented. Even setting aside being Kirill's oldest son, he was unstoppable. Legends about him were already spreading like wildfire when he was still a squire.
Sorry, I have a phone call. Negotiate which occasions call for deploying the infected diagnosis technology. Very well, I'll pass it on and make the preparations.
Sounds like the Radiant Knight is busy.
I'm sorry, I was hoping to stay a little longer.
Go on now, us old folks aren't going anywhere. I'm still thinking about the Nearls. It's been a while since anyone's mentioned Schnitz. It's too bad. He could have gone down in Casimirsian history as a hero like his father. Hell, he should have. Right, I just never thought a bright light like his would turn out to be a brief spark on the battlefield. Remember how we were launching a counterattack on the fortress at the easternmost point of the battlefront? and there was a squad that cut off Ursus's first wave of reinforcements. Huh, how could I forget? Back then I really thought the two of them would stand side by side on the battlefield as leaders of the Arknights in only a few more years. I remember I was planning on sticking around until both the Nearl young'uns had made a name for themselves. Who would have thought that by the time we finally left the battlefield there wouldn't be any Nearls in the Arknights. And that punk Mlynar left of his own volition. Well, it's not like he led a real nightclub. Schnitz wanted to include them in the operation, but the other nightclubs pushed back, and Mlynar just didn't want his friends bullied. How could a bunch of refugees who simply want to break through the fortress and return to their homelands possibly compare to us knights? Speaking of, where did that punk run off to? I should have asked Margaret just now. If she didn't bring it up, he probably hasn't written back yet. He used to leave home for months or years at a time, didn't he? Don't worry about him. Margaret's here to take care of the family. Things get better slowly but surely. I want to ask you what you two talked about in the end. You made your decision. But if you told me that there is no longer a place for knights in Casimirs, I suppose I wouldn't disagree. The vast majority of folks prefer the performers in the arenas, who can help them forget their hardships, over a knight who can actually shatter their suffering. I mean, they don't actually want to see their lives shattered. It's a waste of time and effort. Besides, putting up a struggle till the very end rarely ends well. He understood that, no doubt. I'm sure he did, and both of us have known that for a long time now too. He simply chose to bang his head on the past straight on. Well, we said give us some peace and quiet to think on things. Not that either of us will ever have peace again. A foul beast cries out. It is a unique cry, one that can only be heard before the coming of winter. On hearing it, one thinks back to years past, to the fresh snow they threaded upon, and the forest in their and the frost on their weapons. Though it was but a single snowflake silently falling into the abyss, they heard the long, roaring echo of the winter's northern winds. That said, sometimes I think, hey, even a good-for-nothing like me can do some good and rescue folks. So, who exactly are these vast majority of folks we're blaming here? When you look at it that way, maybe it's not all that disgraceful to be just an ordinary person. Besides, he returned the sword to you. There is no place for such a sharp weapon in today's Casimirs. He needn't have gone through the trouble. Returning to their small huts in the corner of the village, the repatriated infected workmen quietly walk past two neighbors who are discussing how to work together to collect the resources they need to make it through the winter. Both the white haze and their breaths and the smoke from the kitchens slowly dissipates in the breeze. They will never again wonder where they would spend the winter should the construction team arrive. Speaking of which, Pinus Silvestris asked me to pass on this letter of invitation to you. From Rhode Island? They may be a foreign company, but you're already pretty familiar with them, aren't you? I know you aren't too interested in their particular business, but you should keep the letter. They actually helped us out a little when we pulled our little kidnapping stunt. The business permit I got from them definitely came in handy, not to mention the combat support from the young penis girls. I really owe them a huge favor. Business permit! Tolan! Business permit! Why is he not in a bag yet?
Tolan! Tolan! Where is your bag? Where is your bag? You do not accept a business permit and you do not go without a bag. Where is it?
Sorry. Now, while you know I'd love for you to join me, alas, I get the impression you haven't changed your mind, so I might as well repay that favor now. Besides, my guess is that their doctor must have told you something about your brother and his wife. Maybe a message from the Grand Knight? Perhaps Ross's intention was to drop Margaret a hint, and in the end our favorite negotiator chose to pass the word on to you? Even when speculating, you should know there are lines you shouldn't cross. Huh, let me have my fun. So you plan to keep looking, even though there hasn't been any news of them whatsoever? I have no reason to abandon hope. Even if that hope is baseless, it's more than enough. I was in the Grand Knight territory for 10 years, and all the hope I had those 10 years, long years, does not even compare to this hope. Rather, only someone extremely childish would be satisfied with their life, this era, and themselves. Well, ain't that the truth? Speaking of which, somehow I doubt you've written to Margaret lately. Do I need to? She's more than capable of taking responsibility for the trouble she invites. But what with the problems she runs into are ones you've dealt with before? Shouldn't you step up as her guardian? She should be following her own path, not mine. So, where will you go now? A young male driver. Excuse me, sirs. Would you happen to know where Dzwonek is at the moment? Is this the right way? Huh? You don't know. I see. Guess I'll keep driving and find out. A little girl's voice. I don't want to sit in a car anymore. We're almost there, sweetie. Just sit tight a little while longer. Daddy will get you a piccolo, okay? You can't buy handcrafted Lithuanian instruments anywhere else. He remembers practically every road there is, but not one of them points at a city that's always in motion, moving ever forward. All roads have their destinations set in stone. What he seeks lies beyond any road. If a man is but a lost wanderer, what does it matter where he is, or where he is heading? Look at that smile, look at that smile, he's smiling. That is not normal. He's smiling.
He actually smiled!
Alright, now that we are done with the story, let me voice my thoughts over it very quickly. About the story as a whole, characters, yada yada, you know the drill, what I do at the end of these kind of side stories here on the channel. Plus, at the end of this, at the end of my hopefully short ramble, I will include the EP that was also released for Mlynar. And a link to the EP is also going to be in the description of the video, so if you want to just go ahead and listen to it, you can also easily find it on the main channel of Arknights, so it's not a big deal. Pretty good song, by the way, as per usual. Hypergriff is not a music company. Totally not. But anyway, outside of that, if anybody here is jumping ship and is gonna close off the video, thank you all for listening. Please consider leaving a like on the video if you liked this type of content. And if you're new to the channel, consider subscribing. Would be nice to get the channel up to the beautiful number of 1,000 eventually, and grow this community. Alright then. But let's go into the meat and potatoes of this thing, right? So first off, obviously, I like the story a lot. It dove pretty... Well, did it dive pretty deep into stuff? It did. Showcase and characterize a lot of characters. It was nice. First off, it was very nice to see after the events of Nearl Light that Flametail and Ashlock are
starting to do missions now for Rhode Island. Pretty nice detail there that they are on their first mission. And pretty much an epilogue for Shevchik as well, showcasing that he went from the Grand Knight territory to Dzwonek and with his family, and is now just finding his place in life again. Peaceful life, rather. Even though he got pulled into shit. Not really sure what to say about Desh, outside of the fact that I am happy that she realized the fact that the job that she was doing was not fulfilling, and that that is not what she wants to do. She wants to essentially, you know, fight for justice and not do the dirty shit for the big companies. So good on her that she realized that she is in the wrong place. And then we had a lot about Mlynar. And Mlynar, no matter how Tsum he is, and he's very tsundere, you cannot tell me this man is not a tsundere. Jesus Christ. But yeah, anyway, it was nice seeing a lot more about him. Again, if you are new to the Nearl story, Nearl Light the Nearl story in general, I would suggest starting off with the Maria Nearl story, which is obviously the thing that kicked everything off, continuing into Pinus Silvestris, and then when the rerun happens with Nearl Light, consume also that story along the way. It will fill in, that one will fill in a lot of blanks, because if you're listening to this for the first time and you've only, for example, on this channel known the Maria Nearl story, yeah, there is a big gap. There is a big gap in between that Mlynar, the Mlynar in Nearl Light, and this one right here. But it was nice seeing him do stuff outside of being just a grump. But seeing him roam around, and even though he doesn't want to do stuff, reluctantly falls into the whole thing of, well, might as well. His old chivalric spirit. But yeah, it was also nice seeing more of his interactions with Toland, that again we do see a bit about in the Nearl Light story, because that one brought to our attention that he and this mercenary doodad knew each other, and introduced us to one more member of the party, or rather to the circle of friends, which is Chitsibor. And yeah, that one was kind of obvious that he is scheming something shitty in the background, and well, he did get what he deserves, I guess. That's all I can say here. But it was pretty hefty fight between the two old friends, having to cross weapons against each other, and one dies in the conflict. Oof. But it did deliver us one bombshell, or rather two bombshells, if you would consider that one. First off was this mofo's bombshell of saying, hey, I have accepted a provisional contract for this mission alone with Rhode Island through the Pinus girls. Excuse me, Mr. Toland, where is your bag? Why are you not on board yet, you Witcher wannabe? Also, yeah, you cannot tell me that this guy's design is not made after the Witcher, right? The two swords on the back. Well, the cape is not necessary to be there, but still, you cannot tell me that he was not designed after the Witcher. Even the hairstyle, come on, like, come on. But still, he might become actually playable. I was joking in the previous part about the fact, well, in the comments mostly, that I would love it if he becomes playable, but judging by what he just said, he actually might eventually join up properly. Mostly for, you know, merc missions, being paid for stuff, but still, it's accepting a contract with Rhode Island. Outside of that, the bombshell, the big bombshell of this story would be Chitsibor's one of Chichibor's final lines, and that being that the Nearls are still alive and that they are hiding out in Leythanian, of all places. Now the question is, why would they be over there? And I think the answer to that is simple. They're pretty much just keeping away. It's literally being like close to home yet far away. It is a foreign country territory which was always at odds with your home territory. They're pretty much there to stay alive and to... I mean, they are literal, like, literal bargaining chips against the GCC, if you think about it. If they come back, it's gonna shake up the whole Grand Knight territory when they come back. And them staying alive and in hiding pretty much keeps the Nearl family still, you know, kinda safe, even though people are being dickheads to the Nearl family continuously. But yeah, interesting. So they're alive and they're over there. So the bigger question now is, when is this story gonna continue? Like, this is definitely an epilogue to the story, the 3 big stories so far. Yeah, 3. To the 3 big stories so far, being Maria, Nearl, Pinus Silvestris, and Nearl Light. But it also opens up, again, a path to something new. Now, we recently had the Lingering Echoes side story, right? In that story, at the very end, while the story itself concluded, at the very end, we got a couple of little hints at stuff happening in the shadows. We also, in that story, get a big reveal. At least we see for the first time one of the two queens, essentially, in full splendor. And a couple of hints get dropped at the end there, which I'm not gonna talk about, but all I can say is, if you have not listened to that story, it is a very good one, very emotional one, and has pretty good music. I would highly recommend it. You can find it very easily on the channel, and you might even squeeze a tear out, who knows. My poor god boys. Anyway, that story hinted at a couple of things, but the good question is also, when is that story taking place in the timeline, right? Because a lot of stories are taking place in the, or start in the huge gap between Act 1 and 2. As a reminder, Act 1 and 2 of the main story are a year apart. Act 1 ends literally at the beginning of one year, and Act 2 begins at the beginning of the next year. And in that giant time gap is a shit ton of side stories. One of which is the whole Nearl storyline that takes place during those months. I think Maria Nearl's story is supposed to like begin somewhere around April or May in that year. And then, as you've seen, if you followed with the narration, jumps a couple of weeks and months ahead because of the training section and stuff. Pretty much fast forwards itself during it. And then we have the major as well that takes place over a couple... I can't remember if it's a couple of days or a couple of weeks as well. But that one concludes, and then we have Mlynar on his 2-3 month journey afterwards. So, and here we actually have dates, which we can tell that after December 1st, he will eventually join up with Rhode Island, considering he got his invitation to consider, and the fact that in his file, if you have him in the file, you can literally in the very first section read that he joins up around 2 months after the events of Nearl Light conclude. So that all happens in that 1 year. So when is the next story gonna pick up? I personally think the next story is gonna pick up as a crossover between the Leythanian and the Casimir story. Probably Nearl, probably Mlynar. I can't really say if Mlynar is gonna go over to Leythanian, because he would definitely get noticed. But I wonder more so if he would commission Toland to go over in his stead. That would be a possibility, because that would also bring us to the whole thing of, is Toland going to become playable, and when? I think yes, and when he becomes playable, I think he's gonna be... I think he's gonna come with that side story, because I don't think with that side story they would give us just straight up the two Nearls. Because I don't think they can just go away from whatever they are doing over there. And Toland is a mercenary, so he could just accept a job from Rhode Island through Mlynar to go and look for the missing Nearls. And there is a possibility that the story that was hinted at the end of Lingering Echoes could overlap with the search for the Nearls over in the Night Territory. And who knows, maybe those two are actually involved or are overseeing or just watching over what is happening in Leithanian to keep stuff in check, you know, to some degree. But who knows? We'll see when that time comes around. But the other question is, when in the timeline then is Lingering Echoes taking place? Because that one is hard to judge, because that one didn't have dates. And the only way you can judge how far into the future that one is by Hebe Alter. And it's a bit of a stretch to judge how far into the future it is, because Hebe Alter's file sadly does not tell us how much time has passed, but instead it... and this was a stretch, Jesus. But instead it tells us, just like the other A1 members who got the Alter treatment, that they grew up, like physically grew up. Not just visually, not just a visual change, but also obviously grew up. They were all teens when you see their files for the first time, and judging by how much they grew up, which by the way, Hibiscus is the tallest out of the three, I believe. Funny. But yeah, they grew up quite a lot, and judging by how much they went through growth, it's probably a minimum of 2 years, I would say, for that much. Because Hibiscus, for example, grows by 7 centimeters. That is a late growth spurt, but holy shit. That is a lot for such a short period. For a period of time, but yeah, I would say 2 years would be kind of like a time period for when Lingering Echoes kicks off, and that one doesn't take over a long period of time, only a couple of days essentially, when you think about it. And the next story might be a crossover story between the Leithanian story that already kicked off during that whole kerfuffle and the search for the Nearls. Would be interesting, right? Anyway, if you do have any ideas of how this story might continue, please leave it in the comment section below. I would be very interested to read speculations on that kind of stuff. But yeah, in general, I love the story. I would say the only slightly more boring part was obviously the whole lawyer section here on Only the Stars with Dash. But outside of that, was very interesting. The revolving pot and the crescendo here with Chitsibor, and then the final discussion between Toland and Mlynar. Hey, we even saw Mlynar smile there at the very end. He smiled. That is a first. I don't remember if he actually smiled at any given point during Nearl Light, but that is a first. Jesus. And we get to actually see a bit Nearl while I'll say this, it was nice to see her in the story, to see that she is picking up the slack over in the Granite Territory at home. But I don't know if it brought much to the table outside of the fact that pretty much just confirms, yes, she's working instead of him for now. He hasn't written back yet, and that the that our three stooges there, our three lovable individuals in the bar, are all missing Maria and Zofia, which is nice to see and heartwarming that they think about them. But those two are busy now on Rhode Island. especially Maria with all the tinkering she can do now. Was still a nice little jump back to see what those four are doing. But yeah, overall pretty good story. I have really nothing bad to say. Like I said, the only boring part sorry Dash, but your part was oof. That was a lot of mumbo jumbo going on there. But yeah, anyway, I will now release you guys into the EP. As I said, you can find the link to the official EP in the comment section. Sorry, not comment. In the description of the video below. And like I said at the beginning before this ramble, consider leaving a like if you haven't already. It helps the video. But in the meantime, we will be busy across the week with other stuff. Now that this is over, I need to record the next episode for the main story. Plus, need to finish working on the next manga episode. So that's gonna be a bunch of work. But outside of that, I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope you have a fantastic day wherever you are. Enjoy the music, and I will see you in the next part. Until then, bye bye.
Just hang by threads wrapped around your fingertips. I raise my sword as a shield, harden my soul into steel. Yes, my sword may shatter and explode like daggers, but over me they'll ricochet right back at you like pouring rain. Oh, you trap 1,000 nameless pawns without cages.